You are listening to an MLGA Network podcast.
Welcome to Thank You for Your Servers, a show which looks at the tech news of today, but from a libertarian perspective. Now here are your hosts, Thaddeus and Gary.
Thank you for logging in to Thank You for Your Servers. I am Thaddeus Preston, a.k.a. Nick Way.
And I am Gary Guthrie, a.k.a. Gary Guthrie.
And this is our almost periodical rants about the tech topics of the day or the week from a Liberty perspective. This and other podcasts are brought to you by Make Liberty Great Again network of podcasts. And with no further ado, let's get it in. New CRISPR-9 technique could fix almost all genetic diseases. Bit of a hyperbolic article. Kind of. What is the title? I don't think we can go out on a limb and say from a grandiose point of view that it's going to fix all genetic diseases. But bear with us here while we read through this.
If it can fix my goofy looking head, then I'm in.
Yeah, or maybe my propensity to, not process sugars well or something like that. I don't know. Lactose intolerance. I don't know. Make my beer drinking skills better. I mean,
there you go.
Things.
Yeah, sign me up.
So what we're discussing, what we're kind of alluding to right now is CRISPR-Cas9. So I guess what's the CRISPR-Cas9 is short for clustered, regularly interspaced, short palindromic repeats and CRISPR-associated protein 9.
I'm so glad you explained that to me.
Oh, dude, it is crazy. That we just call it, I think in the vernacular in the press, it's just CRISPR. And the -Cas9 thing is just, I'll explain in a minute. So these two scientists by the name of, I guess you'd call them scientists, by the name of Dr. Andrew Anzoli and Dr. David Liu, working at the Broad Institute, kind of came up with this new and improved technique for CRISPR-Cas9, a less error-prone DNA editing method that can correct many more kind of harmful mutations that people suffer for. According to the article, their potential exists to be able to correct up to 89% of what these inherited and genetic mutations that most of us humans suffer from. So some background, right? For those of you who have been following Thank You for Your Service from the beginning, in our, I guess we can call it our inaugural episode or I guess our pilot episode, we actually did discuss some of the crazy techniques, some of the more crazier characters that were wanting to use CRISPR to make themselves become genetically something else. We had discussed kind of the pros and cons of this, but I don't think we've really ever in this form explained what exactly CRISPR-Cas9 is. Bear with me. I got really, really interested in this a couple weeks back when I started researching for the show and to explain this because it's very, very hard to kind of get your head around, but I'm going to try. So the new technique they described is a faster, cheaper, and more accurate and more efficient than existing gene editing methods. So CRISPR as a technology is within this family of gene editing kind of techniques. And I will go to the NIH, the U.S. National Library of Medicine, big government, basically explains what kind of the gene editing via CRISPR-Cas9 is. And basically, in the short of it is, it's basically taking what bacteria do naturally when it comes to fighting off viruses. Here's the sequence here. So when bacteria are kind of hanging out around around your cells and kind of your immune system. When a virus comes in, what ends up happening is that the bacteria or this bacterial mechanism copies a portion of that virus as it comes in into this CRISPR array, right? What it comes from is basically the pattern or the signature of this virus. It remembers this. So virus runs its course, immune system fights it off, it happens. The next time the same virus comes in, it has this bacteria has this CRISPR array signature of the virus coming in. It subsequently then knows it can then basically via RNA and an enzyme go into that virus and basically cut out the portion of the virus that it remembers via its CRISPR array, and that helps it fight off the virus. Using this kind of hacking, it's kind of a cool hack. What CRISPR-Cas9 allows us to do as mere humans is if there is a genetic mutation, then basically they use this bacterial technique of creating the RNA sequence of creating the RNA that can target the particular DNA sequence. It then has a piece of the corrected DNA sequence that it needs to use. And then this bacterial kind of technique uses this, what is called a Cas9. In this instance, it's called CRISPR-associated protein 9. It can use other proteins too, to basically go in and do the actual molecular snipping of the genome, and then using the natural repair, what's the word I'm looking for here? Using the natural technique that cells use to repair itself. It then is supposed to now repair itself with the new RNA or with the new DNA that the bacteria or carrier has. And this is a very error-prone process because it might not take the first time. So this new technique basically allows it to be a lot more precise in repairing a particular sequence of ATGC, those letters that make up DNA,
right?
Or the those enzymes, I guess, that make up DNA, and it allows it to be a lot more precise. So think of it as going from scissors to from scissors to a pencil,
scalpel,
and then moving more to like a word processor. This new technique is like a word processor.
Oh, I see.
It gives
Okay.
a lot more granularity in the ability to do this. So yeah, CRISPR-9 in its current incarnation is like this blunt instrument when it comes to gene editing. Programming a piece of guide RNA and telling the CRISPR basically everything I attempted terribly to explain. And so this new technique is better. So it's kind of like you will be able to do this a much more fine-tuned method of doing this very technique I clumsily tried to describe. So according to Lou's calculations, like I said, there is a potential to correct up to 89% of the mutations that are inheritable, that cause inheritable human disease.
Wow.
There's still a lot more research that needs to be done. There's still going to be a lot more trial and error. But we're getting much, much better at this stuff.
Do you think we're getting anywhere near obviously moving from doing these kinds of tests and experiments on frogs and whatnot, moving from that to humans, are we anywhere near that stage of the development of this? Or, I understand the technology is very promising, but, what does the bureaucracy have to say about this?
It's just so happened that as I was going down this rabbit hole researching kind of this topic, on Netflix, for those of you who have it, there is an excellent documentary that is, it's a 3-part documentary, and I've watched the first 2, and it's called Unnatural Selection. Put it in your queues, Netflix, and chill on that. But there actually are companies that are trying to commercialize these using these techniques to cure. I think one of the heart tugging stories is about a young man he's 8 or 9 years old. He was born with this kind of heritable human disease where his sight will eventually go away. He will eventually go blind. And they were trying to get into this trial where you can give them, you're basically using this technique to go in and correct that genetic, abnormality, so to speak. And yeah, there are. It's very expensive. Obviously, the documentary turns very progressive, very leftist, very quickly. But lamenting the high cost of drugs and the drug companies and this, that, and that. But interestingly enough, this does exist. There are companies that are jumping through the hoops of bureaucracies globally to bring this in. What the flip side of this kind of documentary, I don't really get the narrative here. I don't know if they're trying to villainize these people or not, but there's this group of biohackers that are just kind of doing it on their own. I know one group was trying to create a new retroviral cocktail for HIV positive people that they're trying to reverse engineer what's already kind of commercially available, because HIV has become, newsflash, guys, something you can live with. For all intents and purposes, it's like it's getting to the point. It's not there yet, but it's getting to the point. If you can get the treatment, like living with herpes, right? We are not that far away from that. But the drugs are still, even though they've come down in cost over the last 20 years, they're still expensive. And so there's this other story within the documentary that they're trying to use, these techniques to create better, newer kind of antiviral cocktails. It's frightening that these backyard biohackers are trying to do these things. They're trying to do something with insulin too, I think. There are people outside of the mainstream who are trying to do this. There's some danger associated with that, but it is what it is. And then there's people within the mainstream who are trying to commercialize these techniques. And so we're getting there. And once we get to some later stories we're going to discuss, revisiting our quantum supremacy story from last time, you start to kind of realize, if you stay out of the malaise that is political discourse, particularly even in tech, and you really start following. I particularly created a Twitter list that follows people doing research in quantum information processing, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. You start to learn that we are going to figure out a lot of these things very quickly, and the enabling technologies that now allow us to develop really just very granular, almost programmable capabilities with this CRISPR-Cas9 system.
Right.
And we're just getting better and better at it. We will be able to do this.
It's
soon.
very interesting to me that with this type of technology, we're moving beyond, chemical treatment, i.e. drugs, to digital treatment, right?
More natural. I think more analog in the sense that it's more natural. We're allowing we're learning to harness the biological processes that exist today to correct all kinds of ills in human beings.
It's exciting.
I'm very excited about it. Now, is it going to be in time for us old farts here to take advantage of it? Probably not. I think it probably will improve our end of life care, these techniques, in whatever form they take. But I like the fact that from a liberty angle, man, this will be liberty through technology from inheritable human diseases in the future. And it's all because, we have the computational power. We're learning through examples. We're learning through clinical trials. And I'm you know, I always poo-poo clinical trials because I think sometimes they're unnecessary hoops to jump through. But it also gives us a tremendous amount of data to see, you know, what's going on. And it will help give acceptance, more mainstream acceptance to these techniques going forward. So very transformative stuff. And I hope, oh God, I hope that I kind of root for these biohackers as, you know, my hidden anarchist in me. But at the same time, I hope they're being smart about it. And I hope that them screwing something up doesn't cause like the state to come down hard and really impede the technology.
Yeah, I kind of don't want a mutant frog going out and starting to breed with the the natural frogs behind my house. And
now, to the credit of these biohackers here, do you remember the story of, I don't know if it was in South America or in Africa, of them breeding a new type of mosquito that was going to have this kind of, what was it going to have? It was going to have some genetic mutation that would allow it not to spread certain types of disease. I don't know if it was dengue fever or malaria. Now, don't quote me on this, but what ended up happening, these mosquitoes could never reproduce or whatever and stuff like that.
Right.
Well, to quote the great movie Jurassic Park, life found a way. They found that these these mosquitoes have reproduced and have passed on their genetics to
right.
Mosquitoes that reproduce, and these were done by the best and the brightest scientists. So that tells you right there, I don't have a whole lot of faith in the priesthood. I may have my doubts and skepticism about these anarchist biohackers, but I for damn sure don't have a lot of confidence in the anointed priesthood of academia because, this shouldn't happen, and then it did.
Famous last words.
Yeah, there's some skepticism there, man. So, all right. So next story here, man, just to kind of move on down the line is our statism on the march. I don't know. I don't think it's a regular or recurring segment within the show, but this time we're going to focus on India and what's going on in India today. Well, and we're going to get into a long one on this one, Gary, because it's a trend I've been seeing for the past ever since 2016. And what happened in 2016? Oh, Brexit, Trump, the migrant crisis. I think the Rohingya conflict broke out in Asia. But I don't want to digress. Let's keep on point here, and then we can get into those effects here that are causing governments to, march towards statism. So India said on Monday that it is moving ahead with a plan to revise existing rules to regulate intermediaries. Those intermediaries are described as social media apps and other types of internet intermediaries that allow users to create content. And they're worried about this because it may be causing, quote unquote, unimaginable disruption to democracy. So, I get a little triggered when I see the word democracy. Now, not that I hate it with a passion. I know, as the great Kevin Williamson once said in a podcast that resonated with me, it's a very convenient. Democracy is a very convenient tool because it's a substitute for violence. But so it's a necessary evil. But every time I see that word when I see the word democracy associated with we can't have disruptions in it because of said internet intermediaries, it sounds very familiar. So in a legal filing from the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology.
The what?
Yeah. That's the one thing that the Indian government inherited from Western civilization, particularly their colonial masters, the British. Bureaucracy.
Right.
Right. They said, so basically they said the internet had emerged as a potent tool to cause unmitigated disruption to the democratic piety. So, what does that translation mean? Well, does this sound familiar? The case against social networks exacerbating toxic discourse online and using said platforms to harm our democracy. If you've ever read a tech article over the last 3 years, and particularly this week with the news that Twitter is going to not allow paid political ads on their platform, and of course that Facebook will allow paid political ads on their platform, even if those paid political ads are somewhat false. That basically allowed the NPCs in the tech press to go completely ape guano, because they think that these platforms have very deleterious, let me stop using big words, negative effects on our democratic processes and civil discourse. And so what you start to see is, like, based on the fact that, like, the Indian Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology wants oversight over these intermediaries, and because they're looking at these intermediaries as growing threats to individual rights. I don't see how that's possible.
That's the opposite of the truth, right?
This is true, right? These platforms in their entirety have allowed greater individual rights.
Right.
And
They're
just
saying stuff to, scare people.
Well, because here's the deal, to finish the rest of the quote, and the nation's integrity, sovereignty, and security. So anytime I hear a government official in a bureaucracy talking about national integrity, sovereignty, and security, state security, that should give you pause. Democracy. No, state power.
Right.
So we've actually had, and I think, we'd have to go back and figure out which episode we discussed it, but this isn't the first time the Indian bureaucracy hasn't feared, because I thought they were like wanting to block certain, it was Dota. They were wanting to block access to Dota, the video game, because of its unimaginable disruption it was causing. They were also jumping all over WhatsApp because people were spreading fake news on WhatsApp. Now, the thing I don't like about using blunt force instruments of government to force a platform to police what people do on it, right? I think that's so backwards. The thing I don't like about it is ultimately that has knock-on effects for people outside the jurisdiction for which this bureaucracy is now telling a particular platform that it now must police certain things. Because I think, because remember, I don't like humans. And so humans ruin everything.
We suck.
And I think, we suck. And I think, and I tend to remember from the WhatsApp story about them spreading fake news about certain individuals in India spreading fake news and that causing mobs that are getting people lynched and killed. Newsflash, this happens in third world countries, and I use the word third world specifically all the time.
Yeah, it does.
Long before there was mass media distribution via internet intermediaries, rumors were spreading all over the place.
Right.
About certain things. I mean, even Bill Gates ran into this when he was trying to do his polio eradication. A lot of the areas in one of the countries for which polio was still kind of a problem in a lot of the provinces was in northern Nigeria. And come to find out, when they dug into the data and put people on the ground, it was people just spreading rumors that the vaccine was evil and that it was going to cause all these, they were anti-vaxxers before anti-vaxxers were their thing.
I mean, just a few weeks ago, Ecuador was having mass riots and protests and stuff because the government, of course, just not to get too sidetracked, but to make your point of the the rumors and the misinformation that causes these kinds of problems. the government has been subsidizing fuel prices for years, but they can't afford to do it anymore. The government basically said, okay, well, we're going to remove the subsidies. And based on what the people in control of the fuel companies were telling the indigenous people, of course, they target the lowest educated and the I guess the weakest members of society
the most weak-minded members of society.
The most weak-minded. Let's put it that way. They were spreading the information to them that this was an attack on them from the government, and they needed to rise up, which they did, and forced the government to reinstate the subsidies that they can't afford. So it was kind of a disaster and a really sad case, because it was 100% based on misinformation and rumor.
Right. Spread. And here's the deal. Either I'm pretty sure that misinformation was spread over a social media campaign. That does not mean that 25, 30 years ago, it just wouldn't have been rumor and innuendo. Right. The most bloody mass genocide of the 90s used the good old-fashioned radio, and that was the Rwandan genocide, to amp up people to go out with machetes and murder their neighbors. So I don't hear anybody talking about, how terrible radio is. Radio is heavily regulated globally, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what regulation you put on anything. In this instance, they're going to put these regulations on these social media apps. And there's a component of social media apps they don't understand, or social networks they don't understand. It's social.
Right.
It doesn't matter, ultimately, what the platform is. If people are going to go about committing mass murder, or spreading terrible rumors, or, drumming up lynch mobs, they're going to organize on whatever medium exists. And
as you said,
days, it was the
life will find a way, right?
Yes, life will find a way, and humans will find a way to be terrible.
Of course.
And so, but this is this very, maternalistic nature of government, to think that this ministry of technology, electronics, and information technology is going to somehow force these companies to implement more draconian methods, and these are typically regional things, right? Because there's regional jurisdictions that have their own thing, and that has knock-on effects for the rest of us. And so, the regulatory pushes in other jurisdictions have knock-on effects. They just do.
Right.
And this is eerie of the status talking points that are sweeping the world when they want to villainize tech and social media platforms. Again, you hear it all the time that social networks are exacerbating the toxic discourse, and these social media companies need to do more to stop misinformation and the spread of fake news, and this stuff is harming our democracy and harming our civil discourse. You're putting, how many sex stories have we heard? Have we lamented over the last year that are bringing up the same narrative, and these have legal and technical implications way beyond one market where we want to protect. So I've come up with this radical notion, and maybe it's me showing my what was it called when I was taking international relations, my not ethnocentrism, right, but I guess my kind of ethnocentric view from a Western perspective of how I think the world works. I started to ask myself a question when it comes to these platforms that we've built here in the United States of America, right? Let me put on my nationalist MAGA hat for a second. Maybe, just maybe, the rest of the world doesn't know or appreciate liberty, and so maybe they don't deserve it. And maybe they don't deserve the platforms we create in the Western world that helps them become better. So what America has had a huge hand in developing and providing these platforms that the rest of the world uses to become more liberated and stuff like that. But I don't think the rest of the world appreciates it. I mean, they seem to just what is it, like instinctively just worship at the altar of the state, become very maternalistic about how we should allow these technologies to be used because they might be used to undermine the power of the state. I guess we just haven't inculcated with these technologies that we've allowed, your Facebooks, your Twitters, your WhatsApps and stuff. Maybe we just haven't inculcated a culture of liberty, self-reliance, and tolerance for human experiences.
I think that's 100% correct. I think that you can't introduce a tool like this to be used as an expression of liberty into a place where they are unfamiliar or don't know what this means. You're putting the cart before the horse, especially. I mean, I don't know if anyone's really, seen these as, oh, this is going to be great to teach people about freedom and self-expression and whatnot. Well, I don't know that it is a good tool for that. I think it's kind of a confusing tool from that perspective, and I think you hit the nail on the head when you said, maybe maybe it's not that they don't deserve it. Maybe they're just not ready for it. Maybe they haven't been prepared.
Yeah, I think so. Because if you probably talk to the average Indian citizen on the street and stuff like that, I'm willing to suspect that 90% of them think this is a good idea.
Yeah.
But if you do that here, it used to be 90% would think it would be a bad idea. Now, I read a lot of tech articles and listen to a lot of people that age talk about it. You would probably it'd probably be 50-50.
You think it'd be that high?
I think so. Me and you, if we're Joe Blow on the street of our age and our generation, someone would walk up to me and says, "Hey, do you think it'd be a good idea if the government had a Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology that would then regulate social media networks and how and what they do?" The first thing that would come out of our mouth was, "Get the F out of here, man. What are you talking about?"
Hell no. Or I'd
not
laugh.
only no, but hell the F no. Right? Well, this is a terrible idea.
We can't do this.
Right? I don't know if people 20 years younger than us are thinking the same way. Right?
Well, I hope there's a good contingency that are.
I think there's the millennial. There's a certain segment of the millennials that are just, those are your future statists. Right?
Yeah.
Those are your future leftists, and they're always going to be. I think though, at least my children look because I've taught them well, with the utmost skepticism every time someone from their generation says something stupid like the government should do X.
Well, right? those are the key words right there. Do you think the government should? Okay, let's take a pause here.
First of all, no.
No.
I mean, even if it's like providing, healthcare to the homeless. Even if deep down in my heart I'm like, if the money's there, we should do it. That's the pragmatic Thaddeus. The slightly almost anarchist Thaddeus would be like, "Get the F out of here, man. What you talking about, man?
Yep.
Get that. I should slap that suggestion out of your mouth. Don't you ever say that, dude. No." and so, but that's...
Well, you have to temper, idealism with practicality. So
this is true. I try to do that all the time. But yeah, look, but I mean, you got it. Well, that's the thing, right? This is a global phenomena. They want regulations like this in the UK. China is lost. There's going to be regulation. This regulation is being clamored for in Canada and North America in general.
Right.
And so it's why they're dragging Mark Zuckerberg up to Capitol Hill every 3 to 6 months to yell at him about something.
Right. And it's going to become a quagmire. I mean, we talk about New World Order and all this crazy conspiracy stuff, but honestly, with the different regulations that are coming out, I mean, California, like you said, they've got the CCPA that's going into effect January 1st of 2020, and there's overlap of that with the GDPR and then these new regulations in India. I'm sure there's going to be overlap with that. It's just going to become a quagmire, and it's going to become impossible to comply with every single regulation that, gets layered on you. And at some point, there's going to be a call for one global standard that, basically pulls us all into that, closer to that one world government, new world order, whatever you want to call it, as silly as that is.
I used to think that sounded silly. Now I'm starting to kind of see elements of it. And it's, dare I say it, it's coming from corporations. And it's basically corporations wanting to just give us the rules of the road so we can just do business. And
right.
We will implement whatever you want to implement. Just let us do business.
Make it black and white so that we know exactly what we have to do. And, as long as we embrace this idea that there have to be regulations, which I think you brought up a good point. It is spreading, and it is culturally more acceptable now to just accept that the state is in charge and they will dictate what is going on. I hate it.
No, yeah, we hate it. I mean, the very nature of this podcast is to point out the fact that it exists, and that even in technology circles, which what has always been traditionally from a techno-libertarian in its outlook, that it's spreading, and that these are counterintuitive to the very things that make technology liberating.
Right.
From CRISPR, right? Like the first thing, even us, we fall into the trap of like, well, I feel a little bit more comfortable if there's some clinical trials that are government sponsored that are, doing this. But at the same time, like, but wait a minute, that will slow things down. People will die waiting for the government to say, all right, you now have our permission to save lives with your new drug.
Well, and they're going to require clinical trial. It's not a clinical trial on the technique. It's a clinical trial on each individual implementation of that technique.
And most importantly, the outcome.
Right.
Right. The part of the biggest part of clinical trials is really measuring outcome, or as is called in the medical efficacy of said technique or drug.
Right.
And I understand that, but I do think there's lots of people dying or dead because we've waited for that.
Yep.
And so that's why I think, I was very excited to hear about the new, CRISPR-Cas9 technique as this kind of liberating us from, these earthly troubles that is, being human. In one instance, we can probably, it's funny, like, let's bring this full circle. In one instance, from a genetic standpoint, we're going to get better, right? We're going to be healthier going forward because of what we know about nutrition and what we know about, you being able to edit our genes to get rid of these inheritable human diseases. But the one thing we will never be able to correct is the human tendency to not really like liberty, to always heed to an authority figure. And like I said, the reason why TechCrunch even posted this story about the Indian regulation is the fact that most of their probably editorial board is very sympathetic to government doing things about this type of stuff, because There's too much freedom, too much fake news, which basically all fake news is like there's just too much freedom to just say what you want, and they don't like that, and they particularly don't like that because their worldview is not reflected in the things that are very popular online, right? That are very popular online. All things are political, my friend. And so, I don't know. We'll keep an eye on this. This is going to have terrible consequences.
Absolutely.
Continuing terrible consequences. And it's the continuing march towards statism. And it's, for lack of a better word, is gross.
It's gross. Yep.
All right. Next story here, man. Verizon's 5G network can't cover an entire basketball arena either. So this is kind of, it's tongue in cheek, right? We can get very technical about this, or we can get very, very philosophical about it. But here's the deal, man. These 5G networks are being deployed. Everyone has trials in certain cities and stuff like that. Verizon has had trials in Minneapolis and Chicago, and now they're trying to cover NFL and NBA facilities. And what they're finding is what we found in real world tests with really terrible phones and real world tests with increasingly better phones and mobile devices is if you're using 5G in the millimeter wave wavelengths, it sucks for range, but it's amazing for speed and latency.
As long as you're right next to the tower, right?
As long as you're right next to the microwave tower, because there's physics involved with this deployment. And I've said this from in a lot of the early episodes of Thank You for Your Servers. I kind of explain, like, look, we get to see this in the real world. And with real world data that allows you to design better antennas, better techniques, better, RF interference mitigation techniques, and et cetera. And so, basically what they found here is, they put them for the 2019-2020 basketball season. I guess they put these, their 5G capable, their 5G system in these facilities. And the NFL stadiums are tough because it's a bigger area. Arenas typically are much more closed in, but again, it's still a large area. You also have the fact that, like, if you have a lot of people using not only the existing 4G within the arena, the Wi-Fi which is in the arena, the wireless microphones that are in the arena, and then on top of that, you add this kind of microwave, this millimeter wave stuff, the entire noise floor, electromagnetic noise floor raises, which means it's harder for signals to peep up above the noise to be captured, and so you get higher bit error rates. You need to incorporate more forward error correction for the transmit and receive. And so, so what they're finding is there's significant limits to this.
Right. I think I think they kind of pushed it a little hard, in advertising. Oh yeah, we're going to have 5G in all our arenas. Well, why don't you qualify that and say this is a test? It's a trial. It may not be perfect. But instead of coming out and saying, oh yeah, we got 5G in all our arenas. Well,
there are barely, there are barely any phones with the millimeter wave 5G installed that exist. They're literally what, 2? At least available here in the United States. I think there's a Samsung, and I think there's like I don't even think OnePlus has their phone out yet. And then you got to think there's 5G is a standard, and it's not necessarily linked to a piece of the electromagnetic spectrum, i.e. frequency. So there's actually going to be 3 or 4 bands that exist. Currently, Verizon's implementation is in the millimeter wave band, so that's like, I think that's 18 gigahertz and up. Then eventually there's going to be mid band, and I think that's going to be between 2 gigahertz and 6 gigahertz. On the lower side of that, Sprint has a lot of that stuff, 2.5 and 3 gigahertz stuff, which is why it was very, very important for T-Mobile to acquire Sprint, not simply because of its customer base, but because of its spectrum. And then there's T-Mobile, and they're going to deploy theirs in all bands that they have access to, particularly 600. They were going to get 5G over 600 megahertz. It will travel further, but it won't be as fast because you have less the frequencies. The frequency is lower. And so that means, I could get into the bits per hertz thing, but it's just going to be, it's going to be faster for latency. So the amount of time, round trip time it takes for you to send a packet and receive a packet over the electromagnetic spectrum in the 600 megahertz range, but it won't be as fast. It won't be the gigabit speeds you're seeing for some of the tests, the 5G tests that we have seen. Yeah. And truth be told, in the real world, when there are a significant number of these 5G capable devices around, that's going to change. Sure. There are techniques in the standard for multiple antennas arrays installed in not only the towers but also the phones themselves. The ability to do beam forming in real time that requires machine learning. on the phone, so that it can so that it's some of the techniques I saw when I went to a conference 2 years ago was basically like it will beamform and it will be connected to, it can be connected to up to 2 or 3 antennas at the same time, and it will modulate its power based on which one you're closest to, and it will what they call home to see if you're in motion, what's the next available tower, and then it will need to negotiate that connection so that when you leave one cell to another cell, it then it has already pre-negotiated the connection to the next tower. It's going to be, the truth be told, you're gonna in the next couple years, your phone will have a supercomputer just installed just to handle just to handle your antenna and your and your RF communication link with the tower, even in 4G. So yeah, but I'm very happy to see that at least companies are trying to get out here and test this stuff and be like, oh yeah, that's not going to quite work yet. The chipsets aren't there yet. The phones aren't there yet. The towers aren't even there, and we're going to need, particularly if we do millimeter wave 5G, we're going to need tons of towers, probably double what we have now.
Right.
And they're going to need to be on, light posts, and they're going to need to be everywhere. And then you're going to have your crazies come out of here saying like, "Well,
hey, I'll sell access to a piece of my house for a tower."
I'll do the same thing. and I think that's what's going to have to happen. It's going to need to go on residential structures, and I think in the future there will be residential structures that have internet via 5G, because it's going to be possible. They're going to be quite capable.
Well, and that'll be more. That'll be easier to implement too, because you've got a less variables to deal with in a stationary structure, right?
Right, absolutely, right. The only thing that's going to stop you from doing much of anything is weather. At certain frequencies is weather.
Sure.
Particularly millimeter wave. Like millimeter wave, if it's foggy, you're screwed. Here in the desert Southwest, if we get a good dust storm, that'll screw you up too.
Yeah.
Because there are fine particles of sand that throws off because of how small the the wavelengths are. But no, I'm anxious with this. I'm glad that T-Mobile and Sprint, it'll take another couple months, have closed this deal, because then they can get on with the business of deploying this stuff. I'm not going to get 5G until I think I've given myself 2021 is when I'll start looking around for a service and a phone and stuff and start actually testing the service out for myself. I might play around with it if T-Mobile really does the wide deployments they say they're going to do next year. I may buy a dongle or something and play around with it, but I'm not going to pay any extra for it because I think 4G is just fine.
It'll be interesting. I get what I need. I mean, shoot, what do I use it for? I'm not a power user. I'm not doing streaming gaming or anything over, while I'm driving down the road. It's just.
But
not my thing.
You say that as like you're not a power user, but like I have kids. That's all they do.
Well, true. True.
So
yeah. No, I hear you.
We're on a drive to Denver, and they're streaming, watching something. And
I hear you.
That's just their use case. They get pissed when we get in some of the dead zones between up here in Denver. I think when you get north of Las Vegas, New Mexico, and you're heading toward Raton, there's a kind of a dead. It's not a dead spot. It's just like there's just few towers, right? Because there's nothing out there. But the fact is, I still have some internet connectivity in the middle of nowhere. Okay, let's always stop to think about it and realize as a Gen Xer, like, hey guys, when you're in the middle of nowhere, you still get internet connectivity, right? When you're sitting on a plane going at Mach 0.5, you're on the internet via space. Like you're sending a signal to a Wi-Fi hotspot on the plane. It's going up into space. It's then going down to a ground station and then giving you Yahoo or Facebook.
It is amazing.
We live in the future, ladies and gentlemen. So CRISPR 9's on the way. So there's much CRISPR-Cas9 is on the way. So there's much room for optimism. these 5G networks are going to be revolutionary. They may be just a slightly bit faster in data rate, but the latency alone and the technology that'll be employed to even get you the most reliable link necessary is going to change your lives. It's going to become ubiquitous. And like the future is bright, even if, booted up against the fact that statism is on the rise. It is,
right.
But we're doing all right. And that brings me to the last little story here, which is kind of a rehash from last week or the week before, when it comes to things to be optimistic about. And that is Google's quantum supremacy claim. So we sort of talked about this from a preliminary standpoint. So to kind of review, about 3 months ago, a paper leaked from NASA that NASA and Google had done a experiment with their quantum computer, and that they had achieved quantum supremacy using a programmable superconducting processor. Hence the name of the Nature article and paper that was leaked, and now as of the 23rd of October actually was released with the findings. And so everybody was, all the mainstream press was all up in arms and stuff. But if you really honestly read some of the paper and some of the people, I didn't read the full paper because I don't understand it, but I read smart people who gave synopses of the paper. And basically they're just saying like, yeah, this is kind of an achievement. However, because the achievement was quantum supremacy on a random quantum circuit creating random numbers that only required the Sycamore quantum superconducting processor 200 seconds, 3 minutes to do, and that a Summit supercomputer could not do in its conventional configuration. It would take a conventional supercomputer that was Summit, which is the largest, most powerful supercomputer that the DOE has at Oak Ridge National Labs. It would take that supercomputer 10,000 years to do the same thing, right? Mm-hmm. So IBM was a little pissed because, hey, Summit is our supercomputer, and we kind of did our own experiments based on the preliminary results of your paper, and we've proved that we could do it on our Summit supercomputer in 2.5 days, not 10,000 years. So that's fine. Maybe Google was a little what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know.
They were a little bold. They were a little bold.
Grandiose about their claim of quantum supremacy. But let's put this in perspective here. So, my favorite quantum skeptic, and actually one of the guys who peer-reviewed the Nature paper that was released, Scott Aronson from the University of Texas at Austin, says basically, so what about this IBM thing, right? Are random quantum circuits easy to simulate classically? Well, he basically says, like, look, IBM argued that if you can commandeer the Summit supercomputer and as it currently exists, and basically use its 250 petabytes of hard disk space as well as its memory, yeah, you could do that. And that's what IBM was arguing. They said, like, no, if you use not just memory to do the calculation, but like swap space, as we call it in Linux, i.e., when you run out of memory, you use hard drive space. Mm-hmm. So basically they said, well, you could do this if you configure the supercomputer to use memory and its 250 petabytes of hard disk space, then yes, you could do this calculation in approximately 2.5 days. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of overhead to unpack there.
A lot of overhead there to unpack. So first things first. One, it's 2 days to do the calculation versus 3 minutes. Still an almost exponential speed up. That's still an achievement. It might not be supremacy. It's probably more what there's another term called quantum advantage. Okay, that's fine. That's one knock against Google, right? But it doesn't completely negate what they said, right?
Right.
Or at least it doesn't negate the paper. So, okay, there's that. Next, do you think, I work for the Department of Energy, do you think that IBM goes to Oak Ridge National Labs where they're doing classified, physics experiments on nuclear weapons is going to be like, hey, so we need to use Summit, reconfigure the entire supercomputer, and run this experiment for 2.5 days to prove Google wrong and do a mic drop? Oak Ridge would be like, screw you, we're running classified experiments. We can't just stop this stuff. It take, days and months. Okay, let's say Oak Ridge says, okay, cool, you can do it. It will take IBM at least a week to reconfigure Summit to do this. And then you still have to run it for 2.5 days.
Yeah, ain't going to happen.
Ain't going to happen. And so and here's the deal. Because of the exponential nature of qubits and, quantum computers as they exist today, all they have to add literally is 2 more qubits. And it would take 2 summits to calculate it. So, and here's the deal. So let me bring up the one guy here. So, what's his name? God dang it, I missed it. So one of the researchers on this is a guy by the name of, please don't autoplay. Yeah, you're gonna autoplay. God, I hate that. And it's still autoplaying and it won't stop. Okay, stop. Okay. Anyway. So a research scientist and professor of physics at Google and UC California, Santa Barbara, who kind of collaborated on this effort, by a guy by the name of John Martinez. He just gave a talk at Caltech yesterday, and they basically said we understand IBM's concerns. We already prototyped the 57 qubit system. And it's prototyped, it's still not perfect, but we could probably, all we have to do is literally all you have to do is add a couple qubits. And I think one can truly say that might be quantum supremacy. Let's take into effect that it's this really crappy, quantum random circuit problem that has no practical use.
Right.
But it is what it is, right? I mean, it's still an achievement.
Sure,
it is still an achievement. And but good on IBM in calling them and say, hey, well, wait a minute. The letter of the law for having broken quantum supremacy is no conventional computer on Earth could do it. Summit can still do it. We just have to completely reconfigure it. And we actually have to use all of its existing memory. All of its existing memory plus almost all of its hard drive space to conduct this experiment. So that aside, though, I like this nerd slap fight, right? Oh, crap.
It's great to watch.
I just turned over some water. Crap. Damn it! Why was that water there? That sucks. All right, well, I'll be okay. But no, I like the slap fight. I appreciate this. I appreciate it so much because we're going to get these things sooner rather than later. I would like to see other labs validate these results, build this similar architecture. Even the D-Wave system, which isn't really considered a quantum computer, is called a quantum annealer. Los Alamos just bought one. So these things are going to be entering the mainstream. They're going to be entering our industrial processes. And they're going to change the world. Because remember, the promise of quantum computers is massive parallelization, a analog representation of real world physics in a kind of computational form, and then the ability to simulate nature down to its subatomic elements. That's going to help with CRISPR-Cas9. That's going to help with machine learning algorithms for figuring out the best propagation paths for 5G. It's going to figure out the best materials one could use for new antennas. That's going to create highly more efficient fertilizers. It's going to make AI and machine learning more efficient, because really quantum computers are just extremely complicated optimization engines. And so like these technologies are coming together. So despite our dire topic of statism on the march, the future is bright. And I'm loving this fight between IBM and Google.
It's Tesla Edison all over again, kind of.
Absolutely, man. And it's going to be great. We're going to get good stuff from it. Again, though, I want to see more companies with other kind of architectures for quantum computers come out and do similar experiments. There are tons of startups. There's one startup out of my alma mater by the name of IonQ that's doing a promising kind of architecture for quantum computing that doesn't require to be in a dilution chiller, right? Like at negative, a billion degrees or whatever to work. It can actually work at room temperature. It just works in a vacuum. It has to work in a vacuum.
Did you say negative a billion degrees?
Yeah, man. I don't know because it's like single digit Kelvin, which I think it's not a billion. I think it's
something. It's like minus 400 and I don't know.
Yeah. It's colder than deep space. So these systems aren't really practical now. But I want to see. But this is also going to spur more development in the area of quantum computing, which you're seeing a lot of now, and it's actually kind of developing into a little bit of a bubble.
Yeah.
But out of bubbles come innovations. Even if a lot of these companies will be defunct or acquired, innovation will come out of this. This fight is amazing. I'm super, super happy about the fact that the thing that I was studying for 10 years is actually starting to come to fruition. And that now I actually do see applications for it in the future. And I for one am going to embrace my AI overlords run by quantum computers. So that said, we have come toward the end of our rant. A quick aside, Mark Zuckerberg was dragged up to Capitol Hill this week, or last week. Was it this week or last week? I can't even remember.
I believe it was this week.
This week. Okay, so he's dragged up to Capitol Hill for them to browbeat him about Libra, and they subsequently just browbeat him about his platform and political stuff. And if one is to think that our anointed rulers are going to be able to run our healthcare, our education system, and even our foreign policy and military, I would encourage our listeners to watch that testimony and the most stupidest questions that they asked him, half of which didn't even pertain to Libra, and tell me that these anointed people that you worship at the altar of should be in charge of your lives. It was mind-numbing. When I saw that, I'm like, they were asking him questions that had no relevance. Ocasio-Cortez wasn't even the worst asking questions. It was painful to watch, and here's the deal: we may not be fans of Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook, but I kind of felt sorry for the brother when he was up there trying. He's sitting there wait, what? What do you mean the LGBT makeup of the people in the Libra organization?
Was the that what they were asking? I haven't watched the video.
It was. Oh, you got to watch some of the clips. You're just
I'm going to. Yeah, for sure.
What did that have to do? We got nothing of substance. Basically, they're gonna basically gonna kill the Libra initiative anyway.
Right.
By virtue of government fiat, but there was just an opportunity for them to grandstand and browbeat, and it was
was this the same interview where they were asking him questions? Someone, I remember a headline that kept popping up in my feeds all over the place, and it was, "Watch Mark Zuckerberg's reaction when they compare him to Donald Trump." And that's all it was.
That
There was
might have been in that same congressional because that was like a 5-6 hour testimony he had to sit through.
Grueling.
And so I think he did. And it's sad because again, like I said last week, Facebook is this very imperfect messenger. Libra, it was something that could have been great. And so they're what they're going to do is they're going to jump through all the hoops, but no government is ever going to approve this.
Right.
One, because it's Facebook. Two, it's because it's a check on their power, right? Because it's an alternate currency system that they have no control or visibility in.
Right.
And so that's bad. And so I wanted the mainstreaming of cryptocurrency. I guess we'll just stick with the crypto anarchists that are out there who are kind of absolutists, kind of a pain in the ass. I am very simpatico with their vision, but kind of like anarchists, they can be dicks. And so it's just kind of one of those things where it's just like, ugh. But I mean, they're right. I believe ultimately they will be on the right side of history, but I thought there would be some cachet associated with Libra because at the time when they announced it, I mean, they had PayPal, Visa, and MasterCard support. And they had and they were even going to have some support from Coinbase, boo hiss. But
I'll make sure to look up that video. I'm gonna
look at the video, man. It's crazy.
I gotta see that. That's just I've been looking for an excuse to shake my head at something today. So
dude, it's I don't know how people slavishly worship at the altar of these people who are the anointed. They're stupid. I mean, I don't often say that. They're stupid.
I can't wait.
And you want to give them control over the current. You give them control over the banking system. They have control over the education system. They have control over this. You want to give them control over the internet. You want to give them control over social media. You want to give them control over all these things. Yeah, think about that.
Yeah,
all right.
Thanks.
All right. On that note, I think we're done. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Nick Wang. Listening to some other podcasts on the MLGA network, definitely I've been really digging Voluntary Vixens. I've been really digging the Lesbitarian there.
I haven't listened to Kim's podcast yet. I want to get into that.
Yeah. Still pretty good stuff. But yeah, the good idea. I mean, we should probably get on Instagram. That seems to be what the kids are on. And also we might want to kind of think about the, maybe the Patreon thing. But I mean, we can discuss that offline. But that's it for this week. Thank you for logging into Thank You for Your Servers. Again, I'm Thaddeus Preston.
And I am Gary Guthrie.
A.K.A. Gary Guthrie.
AKA.
And that's been it. All right. Later, guys.
Talk at you later.